Welcome to part 9 of the Roman Empire. This is the second part of the two-part series on the good, the bad, and the crazy. Now, surprisingly, after the death of Domitian, we didn't have a civil war this time. The Romans broke tradition, and they actually set up the next series of emperors were chosen based on their qualifications rather than blood descent. They broke that chain that was established by Augustus, and this would prove to be a wise policy, which led Rome to join its period of most stability and most power. Right. The series of leaders who ruled roughly from the 2nd century CE for the next 100 years are known as the Five Good Emperors. They're also known as the Antonine emperors as well, right? But it's during this century that we view the high point of the Roman Empire, right? It was at this point that Rome will grow to encompass 50 provinces and over 50 million inhabitants. The empire will stretch all the way west to Portugal and all the way east to Mesopotamia. It'll get down south to the Sahara Desert and up north into Great Britain itself. The first of these 5 good emperors was a man named Nerva, who really only ruled for a short time. His replacement, though, was a man by the name of Trajan. Trajan is notable for being the first emperor that was from the provinces. He wasn't from Italy, he's from Spain. And it kind of reflects a similar change that you're seeing in the composition of the Senate at the time, too. As time was going on, we're seeing more and more members of the Senate and the emperor itself shifting away from the Italian central provinces, right? Now, Trajan had a substantial and distinguished career before being selected as emperor. In his personal life, he was very sober. He was always respectful of the Senate. As an emperor, he was interested in expanding Rome's borders. For example, he launched an invasion of Dacia, that's D-A-C-I-A, Dacia. It was a region that is enclosed by a large bend in the Danube River. By conquering Dacia, that allowed him to straighten the Roman frontier and make it easier to defend. And it also allowed him to capture the gold mines that were located in Dacia, which was used to construct very large, elaborate public works under his reign. He also launched a war to the east against a group called the Parthians, and he won temporary victories, which allowed him, at least for a short time, to include Mesopotamia as part of the Roman Empire. The building projects he was involved in. Next to the Roman Forum, Trajan built a whole new complex called the Forum of Trajan, which included the Trajan Column, which you can still see today. It also had a Latin library and a Greek library. The central area was a large open space that was 6,000 feet long by 100 feet wide. And this area, the forum itself was built entirely out of imported marble and stone, right? Trajan acquired a reputation as an ideal emperor. This is what an emperor should act like. Matter of fact, he was given the title Optimus Princeps, right? The best of princeps, right? In later years, the Senate would praise emperors by using the Trajan yardstick, right? A standard affirmation that senators would shout at an emperor that they really liked was Felico Augusto Milio Traiano, right? Luckier than Augustus, better than Trajan. There's a flip side to that, right? If they really disliked a bad emperor, they would have a different chant. For example, when Commodus died, a chant by the Senate was Severa Domiteo Imperio Nerona, right? Crueler than Domitian, filthier than Nero. Trajan selected his heir, which was an equally as qualified man by the name of Hadrian, right? Very good choice. Unlike Trajan, though, Hadrian did not embark on any new military conquest. He was more like trying to just consolidate and solidify the perimeters they had. Matter of fact, in Britain, for example, the boundaries of the Roman Empire extended all the way up to the Scottish frontier, and under Hadrian, they'll actually build a wall on that frontier to keep the Scottish barbarians out. This is known as Hadrian's Wall, right? Hadrian was more of a patron of the art. He loved Greek culture, was absolutely fascinated with it. One of the problems that Hadrian saw as emperor is he felt that the empire had gotten too big. It was too hard to rule effectively, which is one of the reasons why he didn't embark on conquests. And as a result of that, he was always traveling. He actually spent many years on a grand tour trying to visit every single province of the empire, and the Roman court was a mobile one that literally traveled with him. Now, Hadrian never married, and he had a series of mistresses over his lifetime, but the one true love of his life was a young Greek man by the name of Antonius, right? So Antonius was Hadrian's just love, traveled everywhere with him until finally, tragically, in Egypt, an accident occurred in Egypt and Antonius drowned in the Nile River. Hadrian was devastated by the loss of his favorite and had numerous marble statues of Antonius built in his honor and distributed throughout the empire. Matter of fact, if you go into any museum that has statues from the Roman period, from that Roman period, if you see them in museums today, the odds are they're actually a Roman statue of Antonius because there were so many of them. He even founded a city in Antonius's honor called Antinopolis, right? Now, back in Rome, Hadrian built some pretty famous structures, including the Pantheon, right? Just outside of Rome, he built a large palace for himself with rooms and structures designed to remind him of things he'd seen on his grand tour. The next of the good emperors was Antonius Pius, right, who proved to be another sound choice. He was more of a caretaker than an innovator, but he certainly kept the empire running smoothly. And then after his death, he was followed by Marcus Aurelius, who's sometimes known as the philosopher emperor. He was a Stoic, and he wrote a famous book called Meditations, in which he speculates about the virtue and need to do your best even under the most trying of circumstances. Right? Marcus Aurelius had to contend with a number of new external threats, particularly from barbarian groups in the north, and he also had to deal with an outbreak of plague that had begun in the east and spread throughout the empire. But he'll be known as the last of the 5 good emperors. Now, the Stoic Marcus Aurelius is going to make a foolish mistake when it came time to select his successor. He should have just followed that model that had already been set by his predecessors of selecting the successor based on their abilities, but instead he decides to choose his biological son. He's going to go back to hereditary succession, and he's going to pick his son Commodus to be emperor. He'll become emperor in 181 CE. Commodus is a horrible choice. He's a spoiled child with delusions of godhood. He's another Caligula in a lot of different ways. He thinks he's the reincarnation of Hercules himself. As a matter of fact, he would go around and wander the palace dressed in lion skins like the Greek hero. This sculpture you see kind of personifies that, right? He degraded the office of emperor. He would fight in public gladiator matches as a gladiator, and of course, rigged contests that he would win and kill his opponents. And ultimately, Commodus was strangled in his own bath. And the next emperor who was declared after him was almost immediately murdered by the Praetorian Guard. This is ultimately going to lead into probably one of the most shameful moments in Roman history. The Praetorian Guards are going to realize, hey, wait a minute. If the soldiers follow the guy, he gets to be leader. That means we can decide who it is. The Praetorian Guard decide to stage an auction to decide who the next emperor is going to be. At the auction, a man named Didius Julianus is going to offer the highest price to the Praetorians. He's going to offer 25,000 sesterces per man, which is about 25 years' salary per man for a Roman legionnaire, in order to have the emperorship. This is really going to mark what's the beginning of the fall of the Roman Empire. How long that fall is, well, that's up to debate, and that's also something for another lecture series.